Welcome to the Argosy podcast. As our guest today, we have Karow, the CEO and co-founder of ZoraSafe. Kat, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Kat, you've done projects for Apple, McLaren, Formula One, and even the White House. Most people with that resume stay in the enterprise world. What pulled you out of that orbit to build something for everyday people?
My mom, and my sister, honestly. I think we had this idea sitting at our kitchen table, and then that was my step into entrepreneurship. My mom, and like many people like her, they're falling victim to scammers. And here in Florida, most especially, we're having a huge issue with that. And I felt like we have incredible tools on the enterprise side to be able to catch every threat we could possibly think of. And yet there's still such a gap in certain sections of the market. And we're seeing that quite a bit with kids and retirees, and families themselves are just not protected enough.
So tell us about the moment your mom was scammed, and maybe a little bit more detail because you just mentioned it. Not the technical postmortem. We know that you're very technical, but the human moment. What did you feel, and why did you turn that into a company?
Well, luckily my mom wasn't scammed out of, her life savings. So we're seeing a lot of people that are having that happen. With her, it ended up being a lot of smaller scams. I think the most notable one for me was she called me one time upset that I owed her $500 for a debt of mine that she had paid. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And I had been unemployed at the time. I hadn't, and so she got a scammer calling her who knew that I was unemployed and told her that I had this debt that needed to be paid. And she paid it thinking that she was helping. And that was a scam. And then the more I talked to her about this stuff, then I realized that she's actually falling victim in a number of ways. She's falling victim on clicking bad posts on Facebook and purchasing a product that never arrives, or, a number of little things, and getting constant messages like, is this a scam? Do I need to trust? Is this something I can trust? That kind of thing. And that's kind
Yeah,
of where ZoraSafe was born.
yeah, awesome. So you co-founded ZoraSafe with your sister Ellie, who brings gamification and ed tech enterprise. How do two sisters divide responsibilities in a company, and how do you disagree?
Gosh, that's a it's funny. I think one of the great things is that she's tells me the truth and she tells me what she thinks. That can also be hard, but it's also something you don't get every day in the working environment. Sometimes people tell you what they think you want to hear instead of what their actual opinion is, and and that's something you need in a co-founder, somebody who's actually going to say, hey, are you sure about this? Like, what about doing it this way instead? And luckily I do have that with my sister, and because we have very different skill sets, it's been incredibly helpful because she has sort of taken over the marketing and helping with, strategy for the company and go to market and things like that. Whereas I'm heavily focused on the technical product itself. So it's good to have somebody that you can say, hey, I need your help. Could you go create this pitch deck for me, and have them go actually do it because you just don't have time to do it. And it's been incredibly nice, actually. And I think it's actually made us have a stronger relationship despite, all the work.
Thanks for the insight into how two siblings can work together and cooperate in a company structure. You spent 6 years managing Hypergator and one of the top academic supercomputers in the country, and then ran McLaurin's first Miami Formula One event. How do you carry that system thinking into a startup where everything can be on fire at the same time?
I think it's funny. I I think the times when I have had the most fun at work is when you're in crisis management mode. And I know that sounds silly, but when I was managing the Hypergator, I was also managing like the student employees and the goings on at the help desk, the computing help desk for UF. And there are certain times of year when you're incredibly busy, which you can imagine. It's like when the students are coming back to school, or, exam times. Those things are heavily busy. And I think those were always the times where I had the most fun because the downtime was always boring for me. And honestly, I think have done a lot of community theater as well. And you have that with theater. You just like the wild, everything has to get ready at the last minute. And it could be just the neurodivergent brain in me, but I think I thrive under that. It helps push you. So that wasn't really I think it's more I have a struggle maintaining my focus when it's not busy, if that actually makes
Sure.
sense.
Yeah, no, that's it's good to know that that background. That kind of helps understand how you deal with things on the fly, and you're effective in doing so. So you
Yeah,
ran
I think
tech
it
operations at Guy.
honestly, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think if you actually I've met a lot of startup founders along this process because you keep going to
Oh,
competitions and stuff with them and, and a lot of them fall in that neurodivergent, and I think that's kind of funny actually once you get down to it because they end up being good under crisis. Like, it's interesting.
balancing and juggling everything at once, right? Yep. Very good. So you ran tech operations at Guy Point Security while also founding ZoraSafe. So we're talking about juggling, right? Things. A lot of founders try to keep a day job early on. What did that teach you, and what did it cost you?
Oh, it's impossibly difficult. I was trying to code at night and do email responses for ZoraSafe in the evenings and on the weekends, and it left absolutely no time for anything. I didn't have the kind of job where it was like I could go in and code for a few hours and take a break. I had highly technical meetings all day long, and I had to be very aware of what was going on because I was managing an AppSec team and delivery management for them. So if we weren't delivering, then our clients were going to be very unhappy. So it wasn't the kind of situation where it could be, you could put half your effort into it. It was full effort all day, every day, and then going, well, to my same living room couch and then going and coding all night. So not much time for anything and physically exhausting.
Yeah. Very long days. You say 16, 20-hour days at times or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I have an autoimmune disease, so I think I pushed myself probably harder than I should physically.
So when you talk about Zora Safe, where does the name Zora come from? Or Zora Safe?
So
There's some
Zora,
history with that?
there is. Actually, our initial name was APREX, and I went to a competition. I was in the first aggregator program that we were in, and went to a pitch night, and they couldn't pronounce our company name. And I had along that, first month or so, I had multiple people ask me what it meant, and I realized, wow, okay, I chose a word that I thought would resonate, and I had like a bee robot logo, and I just, I thought apiary, hive, all of that made sense, and it didn't. And so I called my sister and I was like, we need to rebrand, and nobody knows what an apiary is. Ellie actually is instrumental in the current name. Zora with another R is a fox in Spanish. And Zora is zero online risk, resilience, and awareness. So that's our.
Gotcha. Oh, gotcha. That makes sense now. And so that also explains the fox, because I was going to ask about the
Yep.
fox in the logo as well.
Explains the
But yeah.
fox.
So one of the taglines for Zora Safe is pause, verify, and protect. Walk us through what that looks like for, say, let's give an example. 72-year-old who just got a text message saying her bank account is being closed. What happens in the app step by step?
So, one of two ways. One, we already noticed that it's a scam message and we block it so you won't even see that message. Step two is, are you still concerned? You can screenshot it and send it to Zora, or you can ask in the message, hey, Zora, take a look at my text message. Is this a scam? And she'll tell you immediately whether or not it's a scam or not and what you need to do. So,
Gotcha. Well,
Zora,
thanks for taking it.
she's meant to be sort of like your AI digital guardian. You can ask her if, any type of question you have, really.
Okay. Very good. I didn't realize it was interactive. So there's some interaction that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
person can have with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the AI, actually, we've built it so you can query anything to the AI that you want. We are trying to process the vast majority of the data right on your device. So we aim for like 85% processing on edge. And part of that is the ability to also sift out PII and PHI ever before we query to the cloud. Because I think we have realized, especially now with the emergence of these new AI tools, that people are actually querying things that they don't realize is protected information. And so we can actually help you do that. So you put your kids on the plan, they can talk to that AI, and it's sifting out PII before it's querying to a cloud system.
Gotcha. And do you find that with people being used to talking to things like Alexa's and Google's device, that talking to an app on their phone is not such a big jump?
No, not really. I mean, I think most people they default to their phones. My dad still defaults to wanting to do cash for everything, but he always has his phone. The trickiness there is making the UI so easy to use and intuitive that there are no extra steps and there's not a lot of pop-ups and it's not going to bother them. And that's kind of what this first phase is for fine tuning that once we have our first set of like beta users.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, things that distract them or frustrate them would be, pop-ups would be hard
Exactly.
for them, make it hard for them to use the app or the app to get
Right. And even
adopted.
even just the settings, right? So if you're doing things like SMS blocking and call blocking, you have to go through and allow that for your settings. And that process can be too many buttons and too much confusing. So how easy is that for a senior to do? We'll figure that
Right.
out here soon, whether or not we're smooth enough. But the goal, that's actually one of the reasons why I'm looking at NFC stickers to make that even more helpful, where they can just reduce the number of clicks, basically.
Okay. So do you have a beta? It sounds like it's going out to beta, or is it just is
Yeah, no, we have a beta version right now in the App Store that's live. I have one right now that's in review. So this will be the newer version that I would recommend for people. And it's also free to download. I made the mistake of putting our first one out there for at our price at the $8.99, and that wasn't intended. We want people to be able to use things like Zora Watch without having to pay for it. If you talk to the AI, it's after a certain number of queries that it'll, send you a paywall kind of thing.
is it in the Google Play Store as well as the
That is
Apple App
coming
Store
next. I've done most of the development is pretty much finished. We're just have to film the functionality, for the review board.
for Google?
Yeah. The process, I don't know, this is my first time having to do the app submissions. Usually I'm working with companies that are so big, that's not even in my department. So this is it was a departure for me to learn this process myself. And I will say Google Developer Portal is very confusing. And so is the Play console. They don't make it very intuitive the way things should be, honestly, the way I would want them to be.
Yeah. And it just seems like Apple has a structure to build within a sandbox, doesn't it? For security
Yes.
reasons, and that you do have kind of the open concept of Google, right, and Linux and everything that comes with that. So I can imagine why that would be difficult to develop for. You have
I
eight
mean, they're
threat
definitely
intelligence
unique.
databases. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, they're very unique processes, and they review them for different things as well. Apple is very conscious about certain things, and Google is conscious about other things that are, and the app also has different abilities depending on what system, right? With Google, obviously, we have with Android devices more capability to get to the system level on a number of things, whereas with Apple, we're limited. So we have to do things like heuristic analysis rather than that. So it just gets trickier.
Gotcha. So there's some hoops to jump through for each of those. As
Definitely.
for getting and learning those, yeah. You have 8 threat intelligence databases feeding ZoraSafe. What does it real-time detection actually mean at the edge on someone's phone versus something that's in the cloud-based detection? How do you balance privacy with accuracy?
Well, so that's a great question. So one of the things that I built with ZoraSafe is I built what I called a unified threat database. So when a query, let's say a call is coming in, first thing it does is go to our unified database. So it's going to check for on-prem to be able to know if we can block it automatically. So and that's a great big difference with iPhone and Android is the blocking of calls. That's a great example. With Apple, you have to have a list of those numbers that are known scam numbers and have been submitted to Apple to allow for the call blocking to function, right? So I partnered with another company that has a much stronger database in that area so that we specifically had the ability to block those for our Apple users. Android, we can block far more and have the ability to look into more things. But with Apple, it made it tricky. We partnered with Nomorobo so we could have that entire database that they have for spam, if that makes sense. So depending
Oh,
on the use case, right?
yeah.
And that's the one for call blocking. And that's a good one for SMS blocking is somewhat similar. When it comes to URL checking, we have multiple other pathways for that, right? So you've got multiple APIs for different things. Netscope is one of our backend partners. They have a wonderful amount of threat knowledge for us to be able to rely on. And we even use a lot of the Google threat data and analysis. So, like Google, what is it? Safe browsing API, I think is what it's called. There's one of those. So, a number of different APIs where we're just checking for specific threats.
Okay,
And
wonderful.
then
There's a
we
lot of
have on edge, we've got pattern recognition and heuristic analysis and the ability to answer. I think I have around 1,000 types of cybersecurity queries that they can answer on edge. And the idea is just for us to be able to enhance that capability as we go. And with it being on edge, the idea is that there'll be lower latency and the ability, obviously, to sift out things before queries that are unsafe for the user.
Okay. That's a lot of detail that goes into a product, doesn't it? Wow, that's thanks for
Yeah,
that
oh yeah.
under the hood look there. Thank you, Kat. Talking about Memory Shield, another feature of your tool of ZoraSafe, that's a distinctive name for a feature. What problem is it actually solving, and how does it work with for someone who may be experiencing cognitive decline?
So I've had a number of family members with Alzheimer's and dementia. And one of those things that is frustrating is that they don't want to lose their autonomy, but they need the help. And now we're moving into a far more digital world. All of my parents have digital devices of cell phones that they're on all the time. And they use things like, Google Calendar or whatever for appointment reminders. And they use another app for their healthcare notes. And they use another app for it just seems like everything's very spread out. Well, how do you remember where all those things are? That's somewhat impossible. But if you already have something on your phone that is protecting you and keeping track of all of the outside threats coming in, there's no reason why that same system can't help you with remembering when your appointment is or remembering when to take your medicine. And so part of our memory shield is it's in our next phase of development, but the idea there is that we can build in these helpful things that are they're they're secure and privacy first by design. I've designed the architecture on the back end to collect the least amount of data possible for the individual user. We never even collect your full name. There's no reason for us to have your full name connected with your account. The payment portal, yeah. So if you're going through a payment portal, yeah, they would need to know your full name, but I don't even process the payment, right? Apple does it or Google does it. So that liability doesn't lie with us. There's no reason for us to have that data. So we collect the least amount of data. We sift out as much PII and PHI as we possibly can to protect your individual data. And then we build something like the memory assistant to help you aggregate all of those pieces of data and make your life simpler.
Yeah, it's very reassuring for somebody who's buying something to protect themselves, right? So that's that's
Right.
awesome. You guys do that. Yeah. Why keep something you don't need? So that's a good marketing thing for somebody, and not just marketing. It makes sense, right? And protects the end user. So
I
talking
think it
about another
does.
feature, yeah, I think so too. The NFC sticker idea is fascinating. A physical product that activates a cybersecurity app. Where did this come from, and is it still on the roadmap?
Mm. Absolutely. Right now, we're in an AARP Age Tech collaborative coming up. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to actually testing out with our beta users in that group is the NFC sticker to see if the seniors actually do like it and make it easier for them. But the idea there would be to cut the number of clicks, right? So if you are actively on a phone call that you're worried about and you need to see, one of the things we have right there on your home screen is a rotating family passphrase. So every 10 minutes, there's a new passphrase that pops up. Every single member of your family plan gets that same passphrase every 10 minutes. So if you get one of those AI generated deepfake calls, all you have to do, what's the family passphrase, right? It takes 2 seconds, but closing the call and opening ZoraSafe, those like few clicks can be enough of a barrier for that person not to get there, right? So the idea there would be just one sticker on the back of their phone with one click. The app opens right there and it automatically can tell that you're on an active call if you're doing that, right? And then we can give you quick tip tools, right? Quick buttons and your family passphrase right there.
Okay, wonderful. And is that something that's in the product or on the roadmap?
It's on the roadmap. I have the company that we're ordering the stickers from, but we just got into the Age Tech Collaborative, and the testing would probably be 3 or 4 months from now for that. So,
Mhm. It is there.
looking
It's
forward to it, 'cause I honestly, I think that'll help quite a bit, cut down, because there's a lot of extra clicks that Apple requires for certain things, and that takes down, well, that's a great, but just getting to the Family Pass praise, the normal process would be 4 or 5 clicks to get to that. With the
Mhm.
NFC sticker, it brings it down to 2.
That's wonderful. So the user experience is
Yeah.
even that better. You talked about pop-ups not being distracting and frustrating, and this is
Exactly.
just adding to that user experience, right? Making it more
Right.
pleasant and usable. So you chose Florida as your launch market, and you called it before America's fraud capital. That's a bold positioning move. Is that a marketing frame, or is it actually driving your go-to-market strategy?
It's both. It's definitely driving our go-to-market strategy for sure. It's also my backyard. So, and when I started doing the research in this area, I don't think I realized how bad it was until I started seeing some of the numbers. And Florida is under attack. I mean, we lead the nation in fraud and identity theft. We have some of the most targeted zip codes in America here in Florida. And well, I mean, and it makes sense, right? Seniors are the number one target and kids are the number three. But seniors, right there, we have a massive senior population here in the state of Florida. But other areas that have massive senior populations or retiree populations are also heavily hit. Arizona has a very big problem with this because of the retiree population out there. But all over the southeastern United States, we're having a huge problem with it.
Thanks for some of that background. Now you mentioned children as well. Is ZoraSafe for? And we know it's for the elderly for sure, but is it also for young families that have kids? Then they're on
Absolutely.
their devices.
Absolutely. My ideal would be for people like my sister to install it, and then she'd be able to put her children on it as well as her parents. That's the ideal family. We have included a learning database in there with gamification, and Zora is a little fox and she has a little cave that she's in, and the gamification increases your ability to purchase things for your cave and get swag and stuff. So we're trying to make cybersecurity fun, increase their ability to notice these things, the threats that they're running into on a regular basis, but also have fun interacting with the app itself and learning more. When we first came up with the idea, Ellie and I, we were really aiming for children predominantly because, and this is mainly because I didn't know the extent to the problem that seniors were having. This is what just when we were in the idea phase. And the idea was really to help her children because they're getting to the age where they're about to get their first cell phones, and how there's no training out there for kids. We teach kids to look left and look right before they cross the street, but we hand cell phones to them and they don't know anything about cybersecurity. They don't know anything about the threats they're running into. And when we went to the largest ed tech conference in the world, Ellie and I did, and we walked around that entire conference, and I went up to, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 different booths asking them if they had learning content on cybersecurity, and none of them did. I mean, and this is companies that have coding content, and I mean, they have all kinds of stuff. Not a single one of them had cybersecurity content to teach kids about cybersecurity or the threats that they're running into. None. Right? And I mean, we know that the targets have shifted, and the landscape looks very different now than it did 10 years ago. So we have this massive gap in our knowledge in two giant sets of our population, the retirement and the children. They're not the ones that get the trainings that companies are forced to send you multiple times a year, and the fake phishing emails that you click on and get in trouble for. They're not in those groups of people who are receiving the training, and yet our entire lives are forced digital. So yeah,
Yeah.
the app is meant for
So no,
both of those apps.
okay. No, glad to clarify because you had mentioned that. I just wanted to clarify that it's a good point there, and the fact that it actually started there, and then you saw really the gap, how wide the gap was with the seniors. Very cool. ZoraSafe's value is partly a network effect, right? One person reports a scam and the whole community gets protected, but network effects are brutal to ignite. What's your honest answer to the cold start problem?
To the what problem? Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
To the being able to get the network effect to work effectively, I guess you could say. Yeah, cold
Yeah,
start.
I think. we're hitting that right now. I think it's really going to be those first adopters who are pushing it, and finding people who are going to have the energy to put into it and, send it to their friends and actively report things. And it's one of the reasons why I am focused on the villages community first. They have a very strong network effect already with their community because they're very social and social minded. And so the idea here with Zora Watch is to make it as simple as possible to go and say, yes, I've seen this one. And when you go into the app in the Zora Watch section, there's like at the top, there's a map and it'll show you like threats that are in your area. But then right underneath that, it's a list of threats that have been reported in your area. And it'll say something like IRS impersonation scam. And there's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Have you seen it or have you not? It's literally that simple. And it's one of our ways to just be able to track where they're moving, these scams, and track commonalities and patterns and things like that to a better degree. But like you said, getting people in there and doing it is another thing entirely. So part of our goal there is to start it in areas and sections of communities that are already geared towards that, network effect and neighborhood watch type of personality, like Nextdoor. So we're going to be heavily marketing the Zora Watch on apps like Nextdoor because people who are in Nextdoor are already concerned about what's going on in their neighborhoods. So they would be the ideal person to let their neighbors know, hey, beware, there's this scam going around.
Right.
But
No, that makes
I'm
that
sure
makes
we're going to find it difficult to get that going. It ends up being a lot of those first adopters really advocating and becoming brand ambassadors, honestly.
right. It's interesting that you're also combining that or kind of modeling it. Is it you say model after Nextdoor or kind of something to that?
Well, we'll be using a lot of advertising in Nextdoor because that is the client type that we're aiming for the first like Zora Watch group of users. But when it comes to actually, advertising, that's another thing when you are hitting this go to market, we're planning certain channels and we have ideas of what we think are going to work. We're going to put some marketing over here next door and we're going to advertise the Zora Watch on next door because we think that that's going to work. But then we're going to test it and we're going to see if that's actually going to work over the next 4 or 5 months. And we have to adapt whether or not it doesn't and change the way we are doing things. So I think right now that is a really good approach, but it might not be. And we might find that out here shortly. We'll see.
Gotcha. So the cybersecurity industry has largely ignored the consumer, right? The B2C. They usually go to tech. In fact, TechCrunch described
Absolutely.
their market as mostly B2B, which makes sense, traditional B2B. But Apple, Google, and some major carriers are now starting to look at B2C and add spam and scam filters natively. Are you building into a space? Is ZoraSafe building in a safe that big tech is soon to occupy?
It's a fantastic question. And the answer is yes and no. The problem is they are solving endpoints and certain endpoints, and they're helping with certain endpoint security. But what they're not doing is actually helping with the human element that is the problem in cybersecurity. And I hate to say this to most people, but the human is the problem with over 90% of the data breaches. And we know that. I think the number is like 96%. Is the person clicking the phishing email? And that person might already have their VPN going and might already have spam filtering going, but they opened the email and they clicked it, right? It's that human element is where we lie, right? We cover endpoint security, but we also help you recognize the threats. The idea is that we identify those threats and then we can identify them in real time and then immediately pull up a gamified micro learning so you can identify that threat next time. And so we are incentivizing with the gamification of you not only securing your own fortress, which is, your life and your digital life, but also learning more about how you can protect yourself moving forward. And I think we're finding here that most people desperately want to because we're living in a world where we can't tell what's real anymore. And most people are becoming very frustrated with that. So,
Uh,
what do you want to live in a world where you can't tell what's real and who knows what you're clicking on and you don't click on anything? Or have an app where you can go ask your digital ally, is this a threat? What do I look out for next time? And it's telling you exactly how to handle the situation that you're in.
Yeah, what a wonderful synonym, right? Digital ally for your product, ZoraSafe.
Yeah.
You won the Gator Pitch Miami Panelist Choice and presented at TechCrunch's Disrupt Startup Battlefield. Two very different audiences, right? So what did you learn about how investors see this market versus how operators see it?
Gosh, if that's a great question. No, one of the things I didn't know about this is the VC world, they really love investing in B2B cybersecurity. I mean, it's been a gold mine for them in the past 20 years. So they are continuing to look for B2B SaaS for
Right.
cybersecurity. And it's a market that's inundated, absolutely inundated. And like you just said, the B2C when it comes to cybersecurity is a field of nothing, really. There's very few, or they're very single channel, one area. And we're seeing this just sort of shift in the way things are done. But almost every VC that I've met with in this inertial phase, they were not interested in us because we were direct to consumer and not B2B. And I think we're going to, just because of the change in times and the way tech has been, I think we're going to see a giant shift in the market here on who is actually going to be buying those things. Historically, the consumer was harder to sell to for cybersecurity. Your cost to acquire customers higher. So a VC looks at that as there's going to be a lot of initial investment for we don't know. And there's an unknown there that's scary. So I realized early on that we're going to have to find money alternative ways. And we have to build a company that can grow on its own without more investment because it might not come. And because we're mission driven, there are far fewer venture capital companies who are interested in investing. The other one that surprised me, which I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but we're privacy by design. And it's part of my mission to be privacy first. I never will sell our user data. I find that abhorrent, actually, when data is sold
Yeah.
because it affects your life in so many different ways that people don't understand. And so that's actually not a selling feature for venture capitalists. They want to be able to sell data. And if you look at the giant VC companies that are out there, the Andreessen Horowitz of the world, they are looking for companies that have data as a alternative form of money
Become.
coming in the door.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we I didn't realize that entering all of this, that I was designing a company that inherently would not be appealing to them, but that's the case. Sad thing is, that's the way the world goes at this point. So we have had to be a little more creative with how we are able to attract funding.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense based on the product that you're bringing to market. Not selling the data, and that kind of just. I'm sure if somebody buys your product, they'll understand that would give me a warm fuzzy, or actually make me more confident in the product that I'm using. What do you, Kat? What do you find as bottlenecks to the growth of ZoraSafe, say in the next year or two?
Well, funding is a good one. There's only so much you can do without having any extra money to put into marketing or going to events, things like that. It's hard to grow a company without any money. So that's definitely been a barrier early on. I think also being a female in this, and I'm not an experienced CEO or startup founder, so having the confidence to go into a room and tell them my product's the best one here and you should invest, that isn't a level of comfort that I have. And so I've had to push myself a lot to go out and do these things that I find very uncomfortable. And that's been very tricky early on. But the money, I think, and I would argue to say that most every startup you talk to would probably say the exact same thing, though, honestly. The only other barriers that I've had with the company as a whole is lack of knowledge of the problem. And that's people in cybersecurity side, not at all. We understand this problem. So I go to a cybersecurity conference and I talk and they totally understand because they're seeing it on the other side. But you'd be surprised at how few people in the room at a talk in the villages are actually aware how much they are targeted and in the ways and how easy it is to create AI deepfake of your granddaughter. You know what I mean? It still surprises so many people. And I think that surprises me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that is true. How about a year from now, where you are today compared to a year from now? Where do you want to be, just from a technology
A year from
sales or?
now, I would love for us to have moved a couple of versions of Zora out through some beta rounds. So we've had enough users in there that our UI gets smooth and awesome and is the best it can possibly be. I would say I'm aiming for a few thousand users by the end of the year, hopefully, so we can get a few thousand people protected here in our area in Florida.
Right. And then at the price per subscription, we talked about it being $8.99 per individual. What are the other packages? Because it can go up to a family. You had mentioned, being able to protect the kids as well as the parents and the grandparents. What is the different packages that ZoraSafe has?
Right. So we have the caregiver pair, which would be, me if I wanted to install it for my mom or my father or something like that. And then you'd have that basically turns it into a family plan. So you'd automatically get things like the family passphrase and things like that. And that's 14.99. And then each additional seat is, just growing your family plan. And the seats we just changed our pricing, but it ends up being around 6.99 a seat when you add them. Right now, I think we have up to like 10 family members. Anything more than that, we don't have that in the app store, like subscriptions yet. So we have to increase our seat numbers down the road, but that's the max right now. And it's less expensive the more people on the plan. So if you have 4 or 5 children, it ends up being a much more affordable deal. But with that, you have of knowing that all of your family are on the same thing. You're all getting the same family passphrase, and you can also follow along with your family's progress, their learning progress on the cybersecurity side. You can compete with each other on, weekly cybersecurity challenges. We want to incentivize the whole family to have fun using the app.
That's the gamification side that Ellie knows well, right? Yeah, that's
Yes.
cool. That education as well. So in a world where people cancel Netflix, how do you make cybersecurity feel like a non-negotiable subscription?
It's a fantastic question. I think one of the things we have is this caregiver pair or the family plan, because once you've put it on or had your parents put it on their phone, and they are less likely to take it off because they have to go through the whole process again. So there's a certain level of stickiness there with having to show your parents how to use it, or they have to adopt it and start using it. So, um, the other thing is, I think we're all seeing this increase in scams to kind of a vast degree. And so once you notice that your scam phone calls have cut down and you have noticed that you're not getting the scam text messages, I think that is a noticeable change that every user is going to feel sort of the relief of not getting 50 scam calls a day, That just in and of itself, I think is going to show a lot of value.
Yeah. Those
But
databases that you
also,
talked about, that they're integrated, right? You mentioned some
sorry, I can
databases
hear
that
you.
you
I
guys had
talked over
integrated.
you.
You, no, 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 you're good. So you had talked about some databases you guys had integrated, from the spam, like a spam database, both in the Mac and the Google back, for the Google package as well, right?
Yes.
So you're using AI to fight scams that now are AI generated. You just talked about some of them, the deepfake calls, synthetic voices, AI personalized phishing. Is it an arms race that you can actually win, or are defenders always a step behind? How do you view that, or is it?
No, it's not even. We're not close to even at this point. And I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of that comes down to part of the shift that we've seen here is that we don't need to be coders to become a hacker now. You don't need to have a giant knowledge and skill set in this area. You just need a malicious AI that can create some ransomware or malware for you. So the barrier to entry in that type of thing has basically become non-existent. So we're seeing vast numbers, but we've seen sort of a streamline in the entire process of cybercrime as a service. Beforehand, when you looked at an attack chain, they were sort of separated. The person who hacked you and stole the user information or the data from company X, and that gave you enough data to then do another part of the hack. Each of these were different parts of that pipeline, that attack chain. And they were usually people with very different skill sets. So it ended up being teams of people or hackers, right, that can accomplish these things. And then being able to get your crypto and actually cash out the end was another step in the process, another person in that process. AI has now streamlined that entire process, right? So it's easier to get the data. It's easier to move into the hack and actually get the hack and accomplish the hack. And then it's easier to cash out at the end. So we are seeing a very different landscape than we were 10 years ago. And the ability to combat it has shifted quite a bit as well. So yes, we have AI and we are advancing the defense side quite rapidly, but I have a regular search running for a daily, threats that have popped up. And every single day I'm seeing incredibly scary things that were not there the day before. And it's stuff that is getting through a lot of the security that some of our massive companies around the world have been relying on for years. So no, we're not combating it fast enough. We have some of the tools to be able to, but we don't have enough practitioners on the defensive side, if I'm being honest. I don't think we have enough people who understand the cybersecurity landscape to be able to combat it fast enough.
Okay, gotcha. That's an honest answer. A lot of people are saying that it may be, instead of day zero response, it may be, we're being very optimistic. They're saying day zero minus one, but that's obviously not in the same space. But I think that's an honest answer that sometimes we're kind of trying to catch up to problems that have occurred or scams that are
Yeah.
out there, right? Yep. So your
Yeah. Well,
TEDx
I
talk
mean,
covers.
yeah, I mean, the shift is it's just been kind of a scary shift, and like I said earlier, the attack vector has changed too. The number one attack vector is your cell phone now, not your computer. And the number one target are seniors, number two target are small businesses, and number three target are children. And for very different things too, right? Children they want for identity theft, seniors they want for your retirement savings.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for pointing those out because we talked about the two, but that third one is very interesting as well. So your TED talk,
Yeah.
you had a TEDx talk, and it covered where technical tools fail, where pop-up warning isn't really protection. What's the cybersecurity industry getting most wrong about how people actually behave under social engineering pressure?
Gosh, I'm not sure they're necessarily getting anything wrong. It's just the fact that social engineering. My TED talk was on data privacy and our rights and how they're kind of being eroded by the data industry. And it ties in hand with social engineering very closely because the social engineering has become easy with AI, right? You can purchase data on a human being and you can purchase their data by their vulnerability because you're sold in lists by your vulnerability, right? So you can purchase a list of veterans with PTSD and you can purchase a list of rape sufferers. You can purchase a list of suffering seniors who are living on a fixed income and they can be listed by their diseases. I mean, they're just, and then you can turn that into your AI system and create hyper targeted, hyper realistic, either phishing emails or smishing or quishing or whatever the hell you want to do. And they are creating this not only sense of urgency, but manipulation. And they're providing enough of your own data and information and know enough about you to determine your probability to fall for a scam. And we know that AI generated scams are something like 70% more effective than regular human formed scams, right? So the increase in people falling for them is shocking. The increase in the ease at which you can buy people's data is shocking. The increase in the speed at which you can manipulate people and then send them at mass scale. It's not even one person calling one person to scam them, right? One person at a workstation is running 20 scams simultaneously because the AI systems are actually running the scams. So the shift is scary. Data privacy and that social behavioral manipulation, they are so hand in hand that I think people don't realize it. And that's kind of where when I started realizing that, yeah, my mom's highly targeted by scammers because they can buy her data and she's on a list for senior. And that's kind of where I went down this rabbit hole on data privacy and what should be purchasable and what shouldn't be and what rights we have that are being taken away by that invisible machine that is the data broker industry. Well,
Thanks for that
manipulation,
in-depth answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So for someone listening right now who has a parent or grandparent they're worried about, or even children, right? We talked about because ZoraSafe covers the whole family. What's the one thing that you can do today before ZoraSafe is in their hands?
I'd say two things. One is go freeze your credit, all three bureaus for every member of your family, but most especially for your kids. Even if your kids are targeted, if your credit is frozen, then their identity cannot be stolen. But 1 in 4 kids are now starting out life in the red. 1 in 4 will have their identity stolen before they're 18. And that was the number as of a year ago. I'm sure it's more aggressive now. The other thing I would say is go to the major data brokers, and you have the right to tell them that they can't sell your data. And you have the right to ask for a copy of your data profile to see what they have on you. I would recommend that to anyone who has, the effort to go out and do that. But freeze your credit is right off the bat, do that is going to protect the vast majority of you. The second thing I would recommend for anybody who has a parent that they're concerned with, most banks now have a trusted contact that they will set. It's not something they charge you for. You can go and tell the bank, hey, this is my trusted contact. If there is an unusual charge or something and they can't get you, then that person is who they're going to call and say, hey, we're just checking. Should we transfer this $5,000 scammer.xyz? And then that trusted contact doesn't have access to your bank account. They don't have the right to move anything or change anything. They only have the right to step in and help you if it's actually a scam. So I would recommend that to most people.
Thank you for that, Kat. Kat, where can people find you in ZoraSafe?
ZoraSafe.com, ZoraSafe.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, or I'm on the social media tools, Facebook and Instagram, just Kat Karow. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, I think, probably the most. But I also have a blog on cybersecurity that I had started well before ZoraSafe, and it's called theshield.blog. So if you want to know more about the data broker industry, there's quite a bit. I have many, many articles. I did a research study on that, and there's like one article on what cars are selling your information, another one on what health and companies, another one on biometric companies. So it's an interesting amount of knowledge on the data industry if anybody's interested in that.
Very good. Catherine Karow from ZoraSafe, thank you for joining the Argosy podcast today. It was wonderful having you.
It was nice being here. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. So important.
Yeah.
And